Okay. Ok, debemos estar en vivo ya.
¿Es en vivo con ella en su estación?
Vamos a estar en el radio vivo ya.
Welcome to Red State Talk Radio. You're listening to Tori Says for the next hour. I'll be your host, Tori. We'll be discussing news, foreign and domestic, unfiltered news. Real news. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tori Says Show. I'm your host, Tori. Remember, you can always follow me on Gab and Twitter at Tori_says. I want to thank everyone for the immense amount of messages that I've received. A lot of you have realized what is really going on with this Assange deal. But as promised, we will be deconstructing this border crisis, to call it what it is, to show the illegal crossings, to show problems that not only the United States is facing, but also Mexico, because we have to keep in mind that Mexico's president is really trying to control this. He is. But, you know, corruption exists in every single nation, as we all know, and it is very difficult sometimes to just carve it out. It's kind of like weeds. If you don't pull it from the root, it's just going to come back somewhere else. So in this hour, and we're going to have a bonus hour, and like I said, it's not going to be streamed on your radio waves globally. And I did get some people from New Zealand asking me how they can listen to it. I've just tweeted out a Facebook Live link where you can actually watch the gorgeous Cindy Gomez-Schempp, where she is airing this, and she will be playing videos. But I, as I said, promise that the minute the show is over, I will render that audio, and within the hour, I will have it up a full 3 hours for all of you to listen, from Assange through breaking down the border and shaming Merkley for his obsession with children. Without further ado, I just wanted to tell you that I have Cindy Gomez-Schempp with me right now, and with her joins us an incredible and brave person on the Mexican side, where he is reporting daily. Because remember, the crisis is not just for us in the United States, it is for the Mexican people too. They're fighting just as well as we are, and you just have to wonder who's really driving this. So Cindy, welcome to the Tori Says Show. Thank you so much for coming on. I have to have you on a lot more, you know, with all these developments going on at the border. And we have Oscar as well. So Cindy, tell my audience where they can find you. I mean, some of them have already found you on ToriSays.com with that excellent expose that you put together. And then I'd like Oscar to introduce himself to my listeners as well as yours, and explain, you know, what he's been doing, where they can find him. So go ahead, Cindy. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for having both of us. I really, I want to give the floor to Oscar right away because I know he's going to have to scoot. So I'm going to let him go first. But I'm going to tell people you can find us at media_PPP on Twitter. You can find us on 88.1 FM, Fargo Moorhead on Facebook. And you can go to kpppfm.com and find all of our past shows there. You can also find the work that I've done with Tori on ToriSays.com. Anyway, I want to give the floor to Oscar. Thank you for being able to do this with us. Oscar, I know you've been so busy this morning, but maybe fill us in on what you were doing today, and give Tori and me, too, an update on what's been going on with these unaccompanied minors going to the human rights building to make a complaint, a criminal complaint against this coyote.
Yes. First of all, I want to say thank you to Tori. Thank you to our audience. And hello to everyone in America. Thank you so much. You can follow me at my Facebook page as public figure Oscar Blue, also on Instagram as Oscar Blue, and YouTube as Oscar L Blue. Too. Hi to everybody, Cindy. Hi to everybody, Tori. Thank you so much for having me on your show. And yes, regarding this unaccompanied minors, there's a man that is wanted for their arrest. His name is Nicolas Esteman. He's from Guatemala. This guy was the security guy at a shelter that is called Agape Shelter. It was the pastor Alberto. He's the one in charge, and this guy practically he backstabbed the pastor, and he was trafficking minors, and he was trafficking people to the United States. What he did was he trafficked three minors. Two of them they're already in the United States, and apparently for now it's really hard and difficult to get a warrant for the arrest of this guy over here in Tijuana. La Procuraduría General de la Justicia, that is a dependency of the government over here of justice. They say that it was not enough proof for him to get arrested, although the pastor took six people to testify against them. So he took another route and he went to the humanitarian human rights for the state over here in Tijuana. He went over there. He took three minors, and the declarations for one of them was outrageous. She opened up and she said about Nicolas Esteban that this guy has been pursuing her for the past 3 months. And one of the things that she said was that not only he was trafficking minors, not only that, he was collided with some organizations from America to work to collide with trafficking minors. But not only that too, this guy has been telling this minors that they are not going to pay 1 cent if they interact with him sexually.
Ugh.
So this is
Oh,
disgusting. This is
God.
so disgusting. So this guy is not only wanted over here for trafficking, kidnapping, he's wanted now for trying to have sex with a minor and offering himself to not only one minor, to every minor. And this particular individual has his wife is in the United States. So the rumor is after sorry for the noise there. After he was everybody confronted him. The rumor was that this his number one option is to cross illegally to the United States. So there's a possibility, a strong possibility that this particular individual is 90 to 100% already in the United States. So you have this kind of individuals and this kind of people are the ones that we're having over here in our city. There's no security. There's no filters for inspection. The shelters are full. Everything is full. You have families crossing, not caring about their children. You have children they're unaccompanied by. The number that it was outrageous for the month of February, 7,946 unaccompanied children that we know of. And the pastor has 17 children they're unaccompanied by. And their ideology is to cross to the United States whether they have or they don't have a parent. They don't care. So they are willing to sell themselves, a lot of them, and a lot of them they are being offered to have, sexual encounters with these coyotes.
Oscar, can I just ask a question? We're referring to the Guatemalan gentleman, right? The Guatemalan coyote, and I'm pulling up his name. It is Sebastian Nicholas Esteban, right? We have his ID, and we do have videos where Border News Network has confronted him for these missing children. Now, I have sent all this information to ICE as well, because his wife is, and I know that you're in Mexico, and our connection is a little bit low on your end, Oscar. I just want to reiterate to people that these are children being trafficked, and what he does is kind of like how drug addicts will sell their body for drugs. He is having sexual encounters or telling children to have sexual encounters with him so that he can cross them on the border. So it is assumed that now he's already in the United States. We can all thank Senator Jeff Merkley and Representative Correa for that. And go ahead, Oscar, please explain to the audience more in regards to this coyote and how this coyote is actually working with American taxpayer-funded organizations.
Yes, actually, I did this, interview with Cindy at her show not too long ago, and I confronted some lawyers right here. There's a part, this the pedestrian entrance to the United States that is called El Chaparral. This place is where the asylum seekers seek their number to claim the asylum. There's a tent for the protection of migrants, the organization over here in America. They're the ones that give the number for the asylum seekers. So you can imagine that the government of Mexico is the one that is taking care of this, but it's not. There's organizations from lawyers from America coming over here and taking care of the whole situation of this asylum seekers. They're coaching them, they're telling them how to claim the asylum and how to break the loophole so they can cross illegally to the United States. I confronted one of them, and there's a video actually that she admits that they were making fake marriages. I confronted her. I told her, you're from this organization, you're from America, you can't prevent me, because she asked me to stop recording. I told her, I'm a Mexican citizen, you can't prevent me from stop recording because I have the right. Second of all, you're an American, what are you doing over here? I'm from the El Otro Lado. El Otro Lado is an organization from lawyers from San Diego. So I told her, you're doing bad things over here. You guys, I have proof that you guys were making fake marriages. And she said it was not a fake marriage, it was a celebration, and we stopped doing that. Imagine that. They stopped doing that. So imagine how many fake marriages and how many children they've been trafficking. There's a lot of children over here that they're unaccompanied by. They don't have no DNA testing. They don't have no DNA testing on the entrance of Guatemala. They don't have no DNA testing over here. And they don't have DNA testing in the United States. These people are selling the children. These people are trafficking children. And it's all about these organizations that they're coming here to my country. There's organizations of radicals, there's organizations of activists, there's like this Antifas, there's BAMs, there's Rapid Response, there's Caravan Support Networks. All of these people, they're coming over here and they're feeding the migrants to cross illegally, and they're instigating them how to cross illegally to the United States. Not only they're betraying their country, but they're committing a federal crime, and they're not even being prosecuted. Why? Because our government is tied. They have their hands tied. This treaty with this international pact of immigration from the United Nations is the one that has our hands tied. Why? Because it overrules our Constitution on the Article 30 that explains that no foreigner can come over here and practice law, but they're violating the Constitution, and they are pursuing and doing that on a daily basis, Tori.
Go ahead. Well, Al Otro Lado, they were actually denied entry. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy. When one of them, their director of legal, came to Mexico, and she said she was there for pleasure when she was for work, and they denied her entry into Mexico, right?
Well, let me just clear up how this whole thing happened, okay? The Al Otro Lado lawyers, there's three main founders of the organization, which is Erica Pinheiro, Nora Phillips, and then you have the refugee program, the asylum-seeking refugee program person, Nicole Ramos. Now, Nicole Ramos had her Sentry Pass revoked. So that's only done by Border Patrol, and that means that the fast pass that she had that allowed her to go into Mexico and back to the United States very quickly is no longer available to her. Erica Pinheiro was stopped at the Mexican border and said, "You can't come in." And Nora Phillips, she flew into Guadalajara. She was going to meet a caravan there to give them legal advice, but she lied to Customs and Border Patrol and said she was on vacation. So she was stopped. She was, flagged. And then they questioned her. I believe it was like 9 hours, separated her from her husband and her child. She was very upset about it. There was a lot of tears when she came back to the U.S. And after they interrogated her, they deported her to the United States. So she has been literally kicked out of the country. That was because she lied about what she was doing in Mexico. And I was told by Pastor Albert Rivera, because he's very aware of how these folks operate, that she and the lawyers from Al Otro Lado go and meet the caravans where they are within Mexico, and they tell them, they coach them, hey, if you go to Tijuana, you're going to have free legal because we're right there on the other side in San Diego, and I'll be your lawyer. We'll be your lawyers. So if you want to have free legal advice, if you want to have a free lawyer, come to Tijuana. And Oscar can probably explain this better, but his city is overrun with these folks because the lawyers are luring them there. There's a reason why everyone is going to Tijuana, and it is because these people are telling them this is the place to go because you'll have us on the other side of the border, and there's all of these services ready and waiting for you. And of course, this has had a horrible effect on Tijuana, the city.
Well, I wanted to say, just a reminder to all the listeners, that Oscar is actually in Mexico.
Right.
Hence the connection, a little bit distance, etc. So he is reporting boots on the ground. And with the information that I've been receiving, not only from you, Cindy, but sources that I have there is literally a Mexican organization that is being funded by Al Otro Lado to recruit children and petition on their behalf at the border to enter the United States. Now, this came as a surprise to me because I know that the president of Mexico has been pushing to verify history, to, vet every single illegal migrant that is in Mexico. And I wanted Oscar from that side of Mexico to kind of explain to everyone how the president has been actively trying to do this, but there are facets within his immigration department that are so corrupt that they're teaming up with companies like Al Otro Lado that are having, Southwest Key. There's an organization on the other side of the border that actually takes in all these children. So Oscar, can you tell us from a Mexican perspective on that side, in Mexico, not because you're Mexican, but because you're in Mexico, how you see the corrupt facets of the government, which is everywhere. Globally, we have corrupt government. Okay, there's no shame in that. But how they're actually orchestrating and working together with these democratically funded programs. And this is, just for a heads up, guys, this is why the president of the United States stopped sending U.S. aid from the State Department to these countries that are creating the caravans, because it was determined that federal taxpayer money was being used to create these organizations. So, Oscar, please let everyone know about this. And just a note, I will not be running commercials throughout this hour because we need to listen to what Oscar says from Border News Network.
Yes, there's a big problem here. And the big problem is that there's, the corruption comes with all the coyotes and the cartels. I'll be honest with you, and I'll be real open about how the situation is over here. You get these organizations that they go all the way to the south, and they go all the way to Guatemala, and they cross to Guatemala, and they tell them, do you want to cross to the United States? And they say, yes. Okay, cross me this bag. What is in that bag? You can imagine that it's drugs. You can imagine that it's, something else. But it's amounts of drugs that they're crossing, and you get amounts of people that they're crossing these drugs every day because they don't get searched. They have the free pass. They have the open borders. So these organizations that they're working all the way from the north to the south, they have all this orchestrated. And it's politically orchestrated. Why? Because every state that they're going through is from the same political party that is right now running, and they want open borders. That is Morena. They don't go to other states. They go to the same states because all of those states in our country are run by this political party specifically. What do they do when they get over here? They get their free pass. They're approached by these organizations from America, and the ones that they're crossing them are them. The coyotes and all these Pueblos Sin Fronteras, Ángeles Sin Fronteras, and all these organizations, they're bought by the government. They're playing around with the government. They're playing hand in hand with the government. And there's a lot of money. Olga Sanchez Cordero, that is the one that is in charge of immigration in our country, was the guilty one last year to say, come in. We have jobs for everyone. Come in. 3 weeks ago, she gave a statement saying, we need to stop this because this is a billion business. She just realized, and I know because I live in Mexico, she just realized that it's a lot of business and she's not getting money. So immediately she gave the idea to stop this. Why? Because there's a lot of trafficking in children, trafficking in organs, trafficking of people, drugs, money, guns, everything that you can think of is coming through that border. Now, when they get over here, you don't imagine, when I first started going to the shelters, I was like, oh my God, there's a lot of Americans helping these people, oh wow, that's good, they're helping them to get their feet, going and to get something going for themselves, but they were not. They were instigating them and telling them how to cross illegally to the United States and how the children are taken to a certain particular hotels. This is another problem. Then when they get here, these organizations, they go to where the caravan is and they say to them, are you going to go to the shelter? Yes, you're going to suffer a lot. Why do you go over there? Let me rent you a room. So actually, we don't know what is the appropriate number of kids that they're unaccompanied by. Why? Because these organizations, they're renting them rooms to live in. And we don't know how many kids they're arriving because they are interrupted on their way up to the north. It's a full corruption with the government. And right now they're stopping them. The rumor is right now that because of Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, threatened to close the border, our president has started deporting. As of 2 days ago, he started deporting, and the amount is between 200 and 300 immigrants that they started deporting now. And that is why there's been a little bit of riots over there with Africans and Asians. And, there was a leader that just got caught that is from Cuba. His name is Mikel Hernandez, and he's a doctor and neurologist doctor. And he got stopped because he was one of the leaders. So, they're not giving humanitarian visas right now. They're not giving transit of visas. They're not giving nothing. Why? Because of Donald J. Trump. Why? Because they're breaking all the loopholes, Tori. All the loopholes. The number one loophole that they're breaking is we see this all day over here. It's so ridiculous. Right here where I was at right now, a few moments ago, I was trying to confront this lawyer again. What is she doing over there in the Chaparral, where there's a lot of kids seeking asylum? It looks like a human auction. It looks like a human auction. This guy is yelling last names, and the Americans are like, it's mine, it's mine, it's mine, it's my turn, it's my turn. It's like that. It's basically like that. They don't have
Oscar,
no control.
Oscar, I just want to reiterate something to my listeners because, like I said, the connection is hard. On podcasts, it'll be heard a lot better. Trust me, guys, when I render it. But what he's saying is that the president of the United States threatened to shut down the border, and everyone was like, "Why isn't he doing it? He should have done it already. We need to stop this now. Why is he telling the Mexican president he's giving him time? Because this Mexican president is actually trying to fix it. He has a hot mess inherited from the previous president of Mexico, which we all know now was paid. Everybody has a price, right? $100 million from El Chapo. And like Oscar is telling you, this is where they're auctioning them off. This is disgusting. It's not just sex trafficking. This child and human trafficking doesn't have just for sex slavery or just slaves in general, as we've seen of reports of Hondurans being used as slaves in Chicago, if you remember the report from 2 weeks ago, but organ trafficking. And it goes both ways, that they bring them from the United States, but the majority are coming in now with these caravans. So this is a real problem. This is a border crisis. And we all have to appreciate that the president is doing it in the best way he can without showing that he has no confidence in the president of Mexico. Because if he doesn't show that he has confidence for the president of Mexico, Mexico will be tits up in actually from 0 to 100 the minute something like this happens. So
Tori,
continue. Sorry,
I
just wanted to reiterate that.
I just wanted to jump in really quick and say that one of the things that Oscar has really educated me about was on the United Nations pact that was signed by Marcelo Ebrard, and people keep blaming Trump for the creation of these caravans and saying that, okay, well, this is basically Trump's problem, and Mexico's not going to do the dirty work. But Oscar educated me about Marcelo Ebrard and his signature on this pact and who his wife is. Oscar, you want to jump in and explain this to the American public?
Yes, in 2015, the worst president that ever existed in our country, Peña Nieto, the last president, he signed this international pact of immigration. He was collided with Obama because Obama wanted to sign it too at first. So they were working together. The only one that signed it, pre-signed it, was Peña Nieto and Marcelo Ebrard, that it was at the time, he's still in charge, but it's at the time that this president, he was the one in charge of international relations for Mexico. He signed the International Pact of Immigration. What does this tell you? That is open borders. Now, the new president, man, and on December 11th, he's still the person in charge of international relations. So he signed it on December 11th, the pact in Marrakech, in Morocco. He signed it. So what does that tell you? That it's going to be open borders, and they have rules in that international pact. They have to come in an orderly fashion, documented, peacefully, and with a purpose. That, it tells you right there, but it just withdraws all the rights that Mexicans have, because we need to treat them equal. We can't insult them. We can't treat them bad. And if the media treats them bad, we can be prosecuted. They have the same rights. We need to give them medical, education, food, clothing, and, comfort them until a point. If they're okay to migrate where they're going, that is where our job is finished. So this International Pact of Immigration is violating their own pact, because they're not coming documented. They're not coming peacefully. We already know that they are damaging my sovereignty of my country. They're not coming in with a purpose. The purpose is to violate the law and cross illegally to the United States. They don't want to stay in Mexico. They already told us that. They're really disrespectful. A lot of them, they're really disrespectful, and they're activists. A lot of them, they're terrorists. A lot of them, they are ex-convicts. So all these things come to one thing that is really weird. Marcelo Ebrard's wife, it's from Honduras. This is a thing that is really weird, and is a rumor that is going real strong with a source that I got in Chiapas. Marcelo Ebrard's wife, that is the guy that is in charge of the international relations of Mexico, she's from Honduras. They trying to take out Honduras, is trying to take out Juan Orlando Hernandez. That is the president or the dictator from Honduras. Guess who is going to be the next president for the next elections? Marcelo Ebrard's wife. She's going to run for president for Honduras. So it looks disgustingly orchestrated. It looks disgustingly orchestrated. It looks like, okay, we already dominated Mexico. We got Mexico. Now we need to dominate Honduras. Okay, honey, go over there and be the president. It looks like that. It basically looks like that. And that will open more the borders. Marcelo Ebrard, a couple of weeks ago, gave a statement to all Mexico, and he said, we are going to continue with this migrant open border caravan. It's not going to stop. they're going to have the same rights as Mexicans, the same education as our kids and Mexicans. And this is the thing, Tori. We got 60 million in poverty over here in our country, 28 million in critical condition. It is ridiculous the statement that these immigrants are using to asylum. I will tell you why. Tijuana, my city, is the #1 in the world in violence and delinquency. You got 4 cities on the top 5 in the world that they are in Mexico for violence and delinquency. You got 5 cities on the top 10 for violence and delinquency and stats in the world. And the #1 country that is in the world that has more cities on the top 50, it's Mexico with 15. Guess where San Pedro Sula, Honduras is at? They are at number 24.
Wow.
What does that make me then? Where is my insecurity? Where is my I'm afraid? You don't see me claiming asylum. This is orchestrated. It's a mafia that is working from all the way to the south, all the way to the north. And it's orchestrated. They have allies, and these allies are these organizations, these lawyers that they're making fake marriages, fake families, and they're coming over here and they're coaching them to disrupt the United States, to invade the United States, to invade our sovereignty. That is all to it. There's nothing else. They're violating their own pact. That is the International Pact of Immigration. That has 23 points. Those 23 points are in favor, the 23 points that they are in favor of immigrants, they have even more rights than Mexicans. And the only 4 points that they need to comply with, they're violating them. Coming in orderly, documented, peacefully, and with a purpose. They're not doing that. You have seen that on TV, how they have thrown rocks. They have killed 4 federal agents. They have been raping our women, stealing our children, shoplifting, killing innocent people on the way up here. They are now involved in drug cartels, kidnappings, and trafficking of people. As you see, this Guatemala individual. They're all disrupted. This is a mafia. It's a mafia, and it is what it is, Tori.
Yeah, I did notice that Canada just issued something just a couple of days ago where people that come to the Canadian border from the United States that are illegals are now being denied asylum to Canada. So Canada has literally shut down their asylum to illegals coming through the United States that have come from countries like Honduras and Guatemala and Mexico.
Meanwhile, our California judge has decided that
they have the right to stay.
Can you please talk to somebody at this administration and let them know about the Canada situation? Because I don't know. I mean, you sound calm, but if you've been listening to Oscar, the situation in Mexico is red hot. I mean, Mexicans cannot wait any longer for something to change, for this situation to stop. They are literally bleeding out. And it doesn't seem like the president of Mexico has got the memo. Oscar, are you there?
Well, no, I wanted to say something on this.
Sure.
I can't even imagine living in Mexico right now with all these caravans coming, with all these people that are not really being vetted properly as the president of Mexico wants them to. How do you let your kid ride their bicycle outside? How do you not, stand with your child to walk them to school, not allow them to play outside? But, it doesn't matter because these people are thugs. These people will take you along with your child. Could you imagine living in Mexico right now where you're overrun with people that their goal, because they've been paid to, is to be going to the northern border of Mexico, our southern border, and penetrate it. So as they go, they just leave destruction in their path. Like, I sympathize for the Mexicans. They must be feeling terror, especially the people that live in Tijuana. Like, how do you live there without being in fear? These people come with guns. They're coyotes. They're part of cartels. And I'm not calm. I am freaking out, but I have trust that he's doing something, because I'm seeing that a lot of indictments are being unsealed, with police officers in Southern California being charged with conspiring with organized crime rings, these human trafficking, because everyone, when they think cartel, they just think drugs. Drugs, pharmaceuticals, and generally globally is the top industry. The second one is human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
So they go hand in hand. So I'm seeing that there's a crackdown on law enforcement and people in office that are working with organized crime units, especially the human trafficking units. There are so many sealed indictments right now across the United States. It's an incredible number. I mean, Cindy, just in the state of North Dakota, we have over 400 sealed indictments.
What?
400. And think California, that has like tens of thousands. There's people that update that database. We have like 50,000 sealed indictments, and they're popping every now and then, and most of it is public corruption. If you follow the justice.gov page, you'll just see how many of them are just coming out slowly. In Texas, we've had like just an exposure of public corruption, extortion, using public funds. And they've even cracked down in Canada, because a Canadian Border Patrol agent, well, he's American, but was stationed in Canada, was caught for fraud. And he came out of an investigation where they're looking at these organized crime rings that bring them from the South and travel them to the North. And that just so happened at the same time that Canada issued an order saying, we're not letting you seek asylum. It's not a coincidence. So the president is doing something, but he just can't do it fast enough, because there's no point in putting a Band-Aid. You need to rip it out from the root and let them pull their own pants down. But seriously, Oscar, I feel for you there in Mexico, and for every single family that has to, be by the southern border of Mexico and the northern border of Mexico, which are just overrun with crime, cartels, and really bad people that are using vulnerable people to make money off of them. I mean, tell us, that's living in Mexico, how it is for you, because that's what's important. People don't seem to understand. They keep thinking, oh, Mexico's just letting this happen. No, these people are being funded with American dollars to get this to happen. So explain to the audience in the United States and globally, where they're listening, how it is for the Mexicans themselves being in the middle of this, transfer from the southern border of Mexico to the northern.
Tori, I believe that we have lost Oscar, and I think we may not be able to get him back, because I've tried him several times.
Well, you can tell me.
I know I knew he had to go, so I wanted to let him talk first. But I will tell you what this has been like as for me as a Mexican, watching this happen in Mexico and talking to people like Oscar, to my own family members about this. Like, I was watching how these caravans were coming through, and every town, every city that they went through, people were coming out and offering them food, and they were bringing them donations. People in Mexico were mobilizing. Their generosity was overpouring. And then in their wake, the caravan would leave a colossal mess. I mean, it looked like a dump, something akin to like after a tornado or something, and you would just see unopened packages of food, brand new clothing and shoes that had been donated to them, just tossed in the trash. People from Mexico that live in abject poverty, rummaging through the trash to collect what was usable that was left behind by these members of the caravan. It literally turned the stomach of people in Mexico. And for me, watching it here in the United States on Mexican channels, on Mexican social media, I was just flabbergasted. I had to call my family members and go, is this really happening? And they were like, yeah, it's really happening, because, a lot of people here in the United States were saying, oh, well, you guys complaining about the caravan being dirty. You never complain about all of these Americans going to Cancun on spring break and getting drunk and acting like a-holes. And I'm like, Well, these are two very different scenarios. Americans going to Mexico are tourists that are bringing money into the country, and these people are parasites draining the little resources, and they don't even have. We have a word for these people in Spanish, sinvergüenza. They have no embarrassment. They feel no embarrassment for what they do. Oscar was telling a story about how he and another famous journalist from Tijuana named Alfredo Alvarez had gotten together donations for the caravan when they first arrived in his city. And they go out there and they were giving out, blankets and just really basic things they felt that would help the most people, like just, heavy blankets and coats. And so they're passing them out, and people are getting all crazy and kind of grabbing things and ripping things out of their hands. And at one point he said he was getting a little bit frustrated and was thinking, like, if these people can't control themselves, we're just going to pack it up and leave because they're getting really handsy. And he sees this 8-year-old kid come up to get a blanket, and he's giving him the blanket, and a grown adult male walks over and rips the blanket out of the 8-year-old's hands. And Oscar stops him and goes, "Hey, wait a minute. This is a kid. This is a child who's cold and needs the blanket." And the man's response just blew him away. He goes, "Hey, I'm a human being too. I too need to feel warmth." And this just
Barf.
It goes counter to every human instinct that you can imagine, to see some of the things that Mexico is seeing firsthand. I mean, everybody's heard about the lady frijoles that didn't like the food. She's not the only person that on public television was complaining about the accommodations or the food or what have you. These are people that have acted so ungratefully, Tori, that now when they go on television, they beg. They literally have to beg please, thank you to the Mexican people, the warm and kind and generous Mexican people, and please don't stop bringing us food and donations. Please don't stop bringing us water. You know why? Because people are so sick of it. They're so disgusted that they won't even offer them water anymore.
Well, the thing is because the funding has run out. The president knew about this, and I just wanted to update.
Sure.
There are 88,350 sealed indictments in our state. I just wanted to mention, in our state, we have 474 sealed indictments. 21 of them were just put in last month. California has Southern California has 1,365 sealed indictments. Northern California, 3,721. Eastern California, 2,051. And Central California, 7,884 sealed indictments. So nationwide, we have sealed indictments, keep in mind, on a regular year are usually 5,000 max. And that's pushing it. We have 88,000 from October 2017 until today that have been accumulated. And I only guide people to go to the justice.gov page where they put updates, and you will see that these cases are being investigated from 2017. The minute the president swore in, everything was happening. People were being investigated. The majority of them were created in 2018, obviously. He knows what's going on. And the people of Mexico are starting to understand what's going on.
Oh, yeah.
And and it's really funny how the mainstream media doesn't shame, eyebrow gate Trudeau, whose eyebrows are falling down when he talks, how he refuses entry to people seeking asylum at his border, when he prided himself and he, denounced and spoke, not in very kind words about how our president did not want them in the United States, how he said it was an invasion, and Trudeau came out and said it's not an invasion, and started talking bad. But why are you turning them away if they're the best? Why are you turning them away if you should have open borders and let anyone in? No one's asking these questions because the mainstream media won't tell you what's really going on. And another thing the mainstream media won't tell you is that Beto O'Rourke, right, down in El Paso, his wife's family owns 22,000 acres of undeveloped property, guess what? Along the border. And that is where the most illegals go through completely unchecked. And not only that, border towns like McAllen, Texas, right? Their mayor, so disgusting. He had his state of the city statement where he was like, we don't have a border crisis. There's a crisis in Washington, D.C. Fast forward a week after that, he's begging for federal money to help with the migrant overrun, with the problems that they're having, with the increase of crimes, with kids running rampant, kids going missing. So now he's asking for federal funding. And then Catholic Charities being kicked out of the city for their operations. They were there supposedly for homeless people. Now, supposedly, they're a place where they're taking in children. I mean, they're obsessed with kids. We should talk about Merkley and Correa and what they did when they went to Mexico.
Definitely.
And how the mainstream media in the United States didn't even follow them there. And how Jeff Merkley, and he is a senator from Oregon, wrote a creepy Medium article about children. It was really creepy. And how he met with all these kids, and those kids that he met with and this coyote that he met with are now in the United States. I think we should discuss that. Please take lead on that, Cindy.
Okay. So I'm going to take you down a little bit of a rabbit hole here because I want to tell you how I got to this information in the first place. So I was interviewing the pastor, and I talked to him about the story of a child that was kidnapped by American activists that I reported on ToriSays.com, the little boy named Carlos. And this little boy, he had been pretty close with these American activists. He had been sleeping in the car of one Kiara Horsley, a.k.a. Lilith Sinclair, who's a sex worker. There's a lot of sex workers involved in this activist group as well. And so when these activists went to the Agape shelter, after they were cleared out of the street in front of the Benito Juarez sports center that they had been staying at previously, when they went to the Agape shelter, not long after that, the pastor realized that somebody was bringing meth and marijuana into his shelter, and he couldn't figure out how the migrants got their hands on money to buy drugs. How did they get their hands on these drugs, right? And he also told me, look, around here, the drug cartels run stuff. And if you have people that are consuming drugs, they know where you got them and where you didn't get them. And so these activists, it turns out, were supplying the caravan with the drugs. And you know how we found out? Well, there was an argument between this little boy that ended up getting kidnapped by these folks. And the pastor interceded because adult people, he said around a dozen of them, were threatening to kill this little boy, calling him a rat. And so what he did in his own defense was he pointed out who among these men who were attacking him were receiving the drugs and bringing them into the shelter, including him. He was consuming the drugs as well, okay? And he told the pastor about this. So naturally, the pastor was very concerned for this child's life. And he's now outed that the activists, the American activists that are basically controlling the caravan are giving them drugs, including this unaccompanied minor, and that they're bringing the drugs into his shelter. So then these people, immediately he kicks them out, but they called the American activists to come and collect them and their group of about 20 people from the shelter, and they decided they were going to take this little boy as well. Remember, among this group of people is the people that threatened this boy's life. So the pastor called the police. One thing led to another. The child was eventually taken back by the Mexican government and put in the care of DIF, which is like human services, right? They take care of all of children's welfare.
Of course.
And the kid escaped from that shelter and ended up in the hands of the activists, along with the two people from the migrant group that that took the child initially from the shelter, and they were last spotted in a detention facility. These two grown migrants that were working with the activists and this child in the United States. So after that, I contacted the pastor and got WhatsApp conversations and phone numbers. Among them was one Sofia Marie de Loreto Chudy, and she worked on the campaign for Nanette Barragan, Congresswoman Nanette Barragan, who most recently was in a viral video attacking the ex-head of Department of Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, right?
Right. And she was going to get fired because she knows everything that's going on and hasn't mitigated it. But yeah.
But Barragan, I noticed Barragan in videos with Al Otro Lado's lawyer, Nicole Ramos, and she was also doing these kind of gotcha videos with Border and Customs at the entry points, right? So I was looking through the WhatsApp chat. I found this woman's name. I found her connections. And when I went on her page, I noticed that she was complaining about the treatment of the lawyers from Al Otro Lado. And she said in her post that she was effing fuming about it. And her family members then proceeded to tag Merkley. So they have a connection to Congress members, not just Barragan, who she worked for on her campaign, but also to other members. And Chudy is from Oregon. Her family is from Oregon. So I don't know if that is the main or the only source of him getting involved with all of this, but shortly after,
Attorney General of California too.
But shortly after that, he went to that shelter, the same shelter that this boy was kidnapped from. And he met with unaccompanied minors, including the two girls that were recently kidnapped by the coyote that Oscar was
Wasn't it a coincidence, though, Cindy? You were on air. We were talking about this. And then you write that article. I'm talking about this. Mm-hmm. And then in just like 24, 48 hours after you're on air, you write this, you put it out. He informs, the consulate in Mexico that he and Representative Correa from California will be visiting the site. Yep. Is that not creepy?
What is even creepier than that? Because the pastor told me that Senator Merkley met with unaccompanied minors without the press present. No.
What press? We didn't see anything, though.
Well, there was press from Mexico there.
Right, but there wasn't any press from the United States. And I myself, because I couldn't go to Mexico, I sent it out to very big organizations that I work with and that I write for under pen names or provide information. And none of them sent out anyone either. And so that is very curious, because I tell people that they need to be very careful what they see in the media and how it is being portrayed. And today, for example, and I'm just going to throw it out there, I just want to close on my end, Cindy, so I can tell people to come and hop on Facebook too.
Sure.
I just wanted to say this morning, I showed you guys how Julian Assange told the world that he was okay and this arrest was all an illusion. I've also reminded you how the mainstream media is clearly simply an extension, a literal extension of Hollywood. They are always about drama, always about keeping us in fear and fear mongering us and never giving us the truth. And so, this crisis here, how is the mainstream media not telling you about the missing children? How are they not talking about the organized crime rings? I mean, Cindy, in our state of North Dakota that nobody even thinks about, right? They don't think about cartels and MS-13 and human trafficking. We have the highest export of human trafficking is in our state. This is a commodity that our state has. How disgusting is that? And a bunch of others too. Arizona, Nevada, and it seems that all of them stem around, Native American reservations, but that's a story on another topic. Now, for all of you that have joined me on Red State, having Cindy, I will have her on again, and again. Please feel free to go on Facebook, look for 88.1 FM, Fargo Moorhead. And you can follow the rest of this bonus hour online, interactive, and you can see Cindy's beautiful face too. And I will be uploading this so you guys can listen at your leisure. On that note, from all of us at Red State, I bid you a great evening. God bless, and I'll see you all here, same time, same place, Monday through Friday, 12 to 2. Thanks for tuning in.
Muchas gracias, muchachos. We'll have Tori here on with us in just a moment. I'm sure she's just finishing up. And we're going to continue this conversation because I have... Are you still there?
We have a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
So hopefully everyone will join us on Facebook, or they can listen to it as I upload it online.
Oh, we got a nice audience going right now on Facebook. They're just waiting to hear the rest of the story.
I've just disconnected off of my radio server, so I'm all yours. Too bad I don't have a pretty face joining.
I know what your pretty face looks like. I want to tell you that one of the things that was really disturbing to me was that Senator Merkley had met with these people, these unaccompanied minors by himself. And I asked the pastor if he had an opportunity to talk about the American activists to Senator Merkley, because this is a huge problem that everyone in Mexico knows about, right? So he says, yeah, I told Senator Merkley that we have a big problem here in Tijuana with American activists going and renting rooms or apartments for these unaccompanied minors. The reason for that is that in Mexico, the unaccompanied minors need to be turned over to the authorities. Even if they're, going to shelters or whatever, they cannot just take them in. The, Human Services equivalent, DEEF, needs to be notified, and they need to take custody of each of these unaccompanied minors. Is that happening? No. The reason for that is because a lot of them are trying to cross into the United States unaccompanied and petition for asylum. And so the American activists and these lawyers groups are intervening, collecting these kids. They're raising money for them online, Tori. I've shown videos on my show where they're talking, crying. They're like Sally Struthers crying on these videos going, these poor kids, they're losing hope. We need your money so we can rent them apartments. And I'm thinking,
that's a crime, though. That's a crime, isn't it, Cindy? Because, if people that actually follow my work know that I focus on government public corruption, but also linked to federally and state tax-funded criminal organizations, how they help them operate. And the number one way that they traffic women and children is by renting apartments and stashing them there. That's like the classic MO. So that way you have them housed up, holed up somewhere, so they're nowhere to be found. No authorities have records of them, and they can move them at their own discretion. I mean, the fact that Senator Jeff Merkley and Representative Lou Correa know of these apartments, that have toured these secret apartments, are accomplices to crimes against children.
And he's disgusting. He was told about it, and he didn't write anything about that. You saw the piece that Jeff Merkley wrote in the Medium. You saw it.
It was creepy. It was very creepy. I was reading it and I was thinking, oh my gosh, how did he even say that? It was creepy how he was pandering for the children. And, the pictures he was using of bicycles, were those outside of the secret apartments?
I don't know where he took all of those. I think he went to 6 or 7 different shelters, some of them focused on children, unaccompanied minors. I don't know if all of the shelters that he visited are legitimate. No,
yeah, or
legitimate. Legitimate, because let me tell you something. These American activists are running shelters in Tijuana. I know, for example, that Caritas shelter is run by Minority Humanitarian Foundation's leader, Mark Lane, and also Bridges of Love Across Borders leader, Bertie Gutierrez. They're running it. They take all of their donations there. There are businesses like Enclave Caracol, also known as Food Not Bombs in Tijuana, which is like a free restaurant, a free vegan restaurant, but it's also a meeting hub. They have their meetings with the lawyers there. They hold workshops for the migrants there. That's the place where that they announced their marches, their protests, their attack on the border wall. All of that happened from Enclave Caracol. So they have strategic points within Mexico. I'm still working on uncovering what the network looks like, and it is massive. I'm not just talking about in Tijuana. I'm talking about in all of the states along the route that are, supported by the current administration's party, like Oscar was telling you, where they have shelters, churches, and I was talking to somebody that's inside the administration, AMLO's administration. I'm talking also with a professor that I'm going to be presenting in San Diego with. Her name is Guadalupe Correa Cabrera. She's a professor at George Mason University. She's an expert on this topic. And she told me that, in her investigations within the country of Mexico, and especially at the southern border, what she noticed, or what she surmises is happening, is that all of these American activists came in with donations and support for these churches and shelters, and they infiltrated them. Many of these folks are now managing these locations, and she said what she saw turned her stomach. These shelter people, the managers of the shelters, many of them men, with very, very young ladies working at local brothels. And this is all happening in the area of Chiapas and Oaxaca. She said, Cindy, I wanted to see every single one of those shelters shut down. So this is what's going on in Tijuana on a massive, massive scale. The question is, why didn't Senator Merkley even mention the involvement of these American activists and what havoc they are wreaking in Mexico, and specifically in Tijuana, where he went to 7 or 6 shelters? Question.
Of course he's not going to mention it because it's creepy. And, it all ties in with the firing of Secretary Nielsen. My sources told me that she was out because, first of all, they're talking about the leaks, how DHS has a list of a database of lawyers, journalists, and activists that are there targeting this butterfly sanctuary. And that was leaked. And it said that she's the one that leaked it to give them the heads up. This is what my sources are telling me. And this is why President Trump fired her. Now, the left wants to say that DHS has threatened criminal charges to employees who leak information. And that's important because many people are asking, well, if he knows that all of this is going on, and I think we discussed that too, Cindy, if President Trump knows that all of this is going on, why isn't he stopping it? Because you can't. Because if you stop it dead in its track, you don't get the people that are orchestrating it. You have to let them expose themselves, because as they mitigate for every block you put in, they try to alter their course and they get stuck. And then their true intentions and what they operate and who is part of it and how they're linking and how they're getting money pops up. So word on the street is that Secretary Nielsen helped let them know that they're on a watch list so that they can shift and maneuver their course.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what it is. Now, in March, San Diego, NBC, leaked the documents to showing, how the authorities are tracking these journalists and immigration advocates, right? Remember,
Mm-hmm.
it was San Diego NBC that leaked it. And we had so many people up in arms, like Blumenthal, who has really big investments in container companies that come in from Mexico for his businesses in Brazil and Central America. And we also in January had a 2017 leaked memo showing that Secretary Nielsen had committed perjury, that she didn't say, that these people are under investigation. She didn't pull it up or do anything of that nature.
Wow. Wow. Because, when I first saw this leaked document, I was pretty ticked off in a way. And I'll tell you why. It wasn't like I was mad that there was a list, that they were being investigated. It reminded me, it gave me this ugly deja vu of what happened during Standing Rock. I don't know if you recall, but there was a Intercept article that showed every one of these activists that we had here at Standing Rock, many of whom I've been following and investigating ever since they came and put on that show here that lasted over a year against the Dakota Access Pipeline. These same instigators, the same people, the activist leaders that were here, are the ones that created the Caravan Support Network. Evan K. Duke the third, that guy, for example, and they are anarchists. They are Antifa, and they are totally against any kind of border security. They're saying open borders. They're saying no wall. They're saying let every single one of these people in, or else we shut down the border point entries. That's what they're saying. They're like, by any means necessary, we will do this. So I was angry. I was angry when that article in The Intercept came out, because all it really did was notify all of the people that were activists, hey, you're on a government watch list, you're being investigated. And it also conveniently left out most of the key players. It conveniently left out how they were all connected to each other, how this was a big group of, it was like a criminal network, right? And it didn't allow for you to see that by whom they selected to put into this article, who they made kind of look like heroes to the people in the movement. So all the way around, it just ticked me off. And
okay, so here's the thing. I wanted to just backtrack a little bit, because you were asking like, I want to see how Merkley was involved. They were tagging him. I'll tell you why. So we all know that during the Obama administration, they were separating children, right?
Yes.
We all know that. And the reason that they were separating them was to kind of determine, because he was under a lot of heat with all these missing kids, complaints from Central American countries where their kids were actually kidnapped. Now, this isn't a very public knowledge, but there's documentation throughout ICE and the Department of Homeland Security demonstrating that. So back in 2017, there was an internal draft by which was distributed to exploring how they can separate families. Now, Jeff Sessions had actually stated that they are bringing state-of-the-art DNA testing to make sure that these people that are saying that they're their kids, that they're actually their children.
Right.
He said that in 2017. So there was an internal memo. And here's the thing. Secretary Nielsen said, we're not practicing that actively, right? That's what she said. And so Jeff Merkley, that senator from Oregon, was the one that asked the FBI back in, he asked the FBI back in January, at the beginning of January, to open up a perjury investigation into Secretary Nielsen, because she had perjured herself, saying that, we're not looking into separating families. Now, they weren't looking into separating families. They were looking into, if the child is over the age of 10, to question them while they wait for the DNA results. And that's very expensive. to do, and time consuming if you want it done fast. And so they would ask them questions to make sure that these kids aren't trafficked, or they're not, part of those gypsy groups, right? Where the kids like run around on their own and have just, decided to go because of money or being threatened or extorted. And so he wanted to say, because the memo alleges that Secretary Nielsen in June on Twitter, right, said we don't have a policy of separating families at the border, period.
Right.
And that's true, because they're not separating the families. They are testing to see if they're actually families, because this is a problem. So this document was actually from December 16, 2017, and it was given to Merkley's office. So he is spearheading this kid thing. He's got some skin in the game, man. So because she said we don't have a policy of separating families, and in there, it doesn't say we're having a policy of separating families. It's determining to see if they are families. So it's kind of like, the way you see it or the way you read it. And I think every single American, no matter where they sit on the political spectrum, even though I'm the one that says there is no such thing as Republican and Democrat, it's just pro-American values or not. That's basically it. That they should all be behind these things, because they're marrying them in Mexico, fake marriages, and then tacking on kids to pretend they're theirs.
And fake families. I showed a video on my show where there was a coyote who was videotaping the coyotes that they have embedded within the caravan. They call them accompaniment people, but they're coyotes. Let's call them what they are. And they do videos to message to their American activist handlers where exactly on the route they are. And in one of these videos, the guy that's videotaping walks over to a group of people, and he's telling people to get on the transport units. And then one of the kids says to the woman that he's videotaping, "Hey, can you be my mom?" And she goes, "Sure. Shall we adopt him?" she says to the camera. And the guy says, "I don't know. He looks a little bit too dark to be our kid." And she goes, "Oh, no, he can pass for our kid." And then she goes, "Come here, honey." And she gives him a big hug and a kiss. And then she turns to the camera and says to the camera guy, "Let's adopt him." And he goes, "Okay, let's adopt him." And then some other kid walks up and goes, "Can I be the brother?" And I was just like blown away. They were doing it on a live stream.
Because they're that, they get paid to do these things. They think they can get away with it. And that's the thing. What I tell people many, many times who can't fathom crimes against children, sex crimes against children, selling them as commodities. What I tell people is that they're desensitized. They don't see them as humans anymore. They see them as a product, as a consumer product. And imagine how many of these fake marriages who get tacked along with a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old that's been kidnapped or, was just taken in. I mean, what makes you think that when they cross the border and they don't show up and they've provided fake documentation, one kid can get you about 50 grand. I mean, didn't we just hear about the lady in Florida who paid her debt by selling her own child?
Jesus God.
Her own child. She sold it for $500 so she's not in debt and that she has money. She sold her kid.
Yeah.
People are desensitized. They don't see them as human beings. They see them as commodities. And, those that see them, like in the case of Nexium, where they had the sex slaves, and we have even the woman that's running for president, Gillibrand, her dad was involved with that. And she still has the face to run. I mean, look at these people. These are high-level people, super rich. Like I remember when I was reporting 4 years ago about Claire Bronfman, who is a lady that drips in pearls. She's got millions and millions of dollars. Remember, she paid a $100 million bond in New York so she doesn't have to go to jail, right? She was trafficking human beings. She had a slave in her closet. She didn't think twice about it because they're not as human as she is. And when I said it, people were like, "You're crazy." And I'm like, dude, they don't see you as a human being. You're nothing to them. It's kind of the way Hillary Clinton would respond to people, like, "Who are you, peasant?" kind of attitude. Mm-hmm. And I've met her a few times. And even though I was working on things and I should have at least had some respect, when I'm responding to questions, she would talk down to me too. And, people don't seem to understand. They don't see you as a human being. And this is how this is happening. And down at the border, these people have been paid to travel there. They see America as their golden ticket to welfare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Golden ticket to an easy life where they don't have to hustle, they don't have to prostitute themselves or whatever. They'll be trained, they'll get a job, they'll get a house, and they're willing to do anything. And if you give them a kid that they can get 50 grand for, especially if his genetic makeup is wanted, you're laughing. They really don't care about that child. It's just a means to a way. And we have actual parents that have, held that baby in their tummy for 9 months, that rent them out for sex, that sell them for their drugs. How are you not able to understand that these people that have no connection with these children, that are less fortunate, that are, what are they, from a lesser, children of a lesser God? Like, what is this? And that's what's upsetting, that people aren't focused on this orchestrated event of allowing an invasion into the United States, but also what they're doing to the people that they're bringing in. Because do you think all of them come in and just get situated? We don't have the money for that, do we, Cindy?
No.
Do we have the money to house them all? We don't.
And, in Mexico, people are hip to this. I think here in the United States, it's kind of like harder for people to grasp that people are trafficking children and trafficking them for sex. And so in Mexico, it's like people are very aware. Organized crime is out in the open and corruption is out in the open. So people are confronting these lawyers. Nicole Ramos was recently speaking at a university, and Oscar tried to question her. Oscar tried to go into this event, but it was not allowed. But there's a woman that shared a video online on his page that was there, and she questioned Nicole Ramos when she was talking about the family separation here in the United States. She actually yelled at her and said, "Hey, there's a reason. It's because of the children being trafficked. They're separating parents from kids that aren't really theirs. They're separating people from children that are not theirs." And she was livid. She started rattling off all the different documents that support the fact that these were their parents, and never once mentioned DNA testing. So that really, it's a red flag for me that that this lawyer is talking about how American authorities are letting these kids slip through the cracks, essentially, by letting them out of the detention facilities within a few days with people that may not be their parents, that may be trafficking these kids. And I have to wonder how many hundreds, how many thousands has that already happened to? Because I just interviewed the mother of one of these kids that was kidnapped, and I was floored. I thought for sure when I got her number, I would be calling a woman who has been sitting there in Honduras this entire time, sick with worry that she had no idea where her kid was, that of course she didn't know her kid had run off and joined a caravan. Her 15-year-old teenage daughter had run away from home somehow, and she was probably sitting by the phone wondering where she was. But I was wrong. I was wrong, because I called her and I told her, and she already knew about it. When I asked her, did you know your daughter had left and joined a caravan? She was like, "Yeah, I did." And then she tried to explain herself and it told me that, she was studying, but she didn't want to keep going to school. And so she told her mom she was going to get an apartment and start working. And her mom said, "Well, you can't do that. You're a minor." She wanted her to stay in school, but her daughter was determined. Her daughter was determined that she was going to quit school and that she was going to leave. So ultimately, she said, I had to support her. And, she told me that she was going to be going in a caravan that had cousins of hers with her, so she felt better about it. And I couldn't imagine any parent feeling okay when you know that 90% of the women and girls that are traveling as migrants through Mexico are going to be raped. Most of them go on birth control before they leave their destination because they know they're going to be raped.
For food, for water, they'll let men do anything they want to them. Some of them are suddenly create addictions. They give them medications to medications or drugs.
Drugs.
feel better. That's horrible. I mean, I'm a parent, Cindy, so are you. And I can't fathom any situation. I mean, I didn't want my kid working till she was 18. My kid's going off to boot camp. I know where she's going, and it terrifies me, and she's 18 now. So I can't fathom it. And that's hard for me as a struggle. And I think everybody else can't fathom situations like that either. This is why they're finding it difficult. But you know what I wanted to ask you?
Yes.
Seriously, though, because I've been thinking about this. Okay, they've got this huge push on pushing all these migrants across the border, as if, how drug addicts, when they're on their last line of coke or their last hit on heroin, they just do it at a one go because they know it's going to stop. Do you think they're making this massive push, because they know it's going to end? Or is it, part of their orchestrated idea of creating this North American Union by creating a social collapse? Like, what is the end game? Think about it. Like, I sit back and I'm like, all right, let's pretend I'm the people of Al Otro Lado. Let's pretend I'm the DNC that's funding, right, the Democratic National Committee and all these senators and congresspersons on both sides, because we have some corrupt Republicans too.
Oh, yeah.
We can't just say all the Democrats. It's the majority. Well, it's all the Democrats, and there's a lot of Republicans too. So they're all funding this.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Is it the votes? Because we're fixing the voter fraud, right? We're going to be cracking down on that for 2020. So what is it? To collapse our economy, to have them, destroy us economically? Like, what is the end goal? Or are they just trying to rush as many children, women, and men across the border because it's going to stop? Like, what is the end game? Because it's not only the United States that's collapsing, but they're killing the Mexicans, who are the middle people between the caravans that are coming until they go to the border of the United States. I mean, that's the ultimate question. And I've been battling through it. I'm like, all right, they're losing a lot of money in trade. They've got skin in the game. Like Pelosi, she's got a huge shipping company interest. And most of those go through the border. Beto, huge interest. He owns railways, like his family owns railways that come across the border from Mexico to the US through property his family owns. So what's on that property? And it's privately inspected, not according to the FRA. So these are all questions. And I'd like you to kind of speculate, because I'm stumped. I'm like, okay, it could be that for me, it would be social collapse. Right? An overrun government where you can't do anything, and all they're doing is pandering to emotions and feelings of people that don't seem to conceive the idea that having an open border and having people just come because they want to, or infiltrate us at invasion numbers, not proper migration numbers, invasion numbers, is normal. And so this is for social collapse. What do you think? I mean, why are they so adamant about it? What do you think?
I have a couple of speculations about the outcomes. Because, I mean, frankly, if you want to talk about motive, it's difficult for sure to land on something. But outcomes are pretty clear. And what is going to happen, what we know from people inside of the Morena party in Mexico, is that they're open borders. They're not going to stop that. They're not going to, quote unquote, do Trump's dirty work for him and stop the caravans. That's been the messaging from that party the entire time. It hasn't changed. Marcelo Ebrard just went on television again to say that this is going to keep happening, that the caravans are going to keep coming. An insider that I spoke to told me, this is now the new normal. You need to get used to it. And I'm like, how do you get used to this? And I was really surprised that there was no response from this person who's an insider in this party in Mexico to say, like, this is going to be a huge economic disaster for Mexico, so we're working on it, or we're going to try to do this. But instead saying, yeah, we're not going to do anything about it. It's just going to keep happening. So I have to look at where the money is. Where is the money? Where is all of this coming from? Because ultimately, people are making bank. Money hand over fist in Mexico and in the United States. On both sides of the aisle, Tori, they are making money hand over fist. Look, the detention facilities and the private prison system are a huge, huge industry. So now, too, are all of these shelters and these, different services that are giving assistance to migrants and undocumented people. That didn't really exist before. I mean, the private prisons and the detention facilities did, but not all of this funding going out to people for these shelters and these migrant services. Okay, like Gavin Newsom is giving out millions in California to these American groups. They're all standing in line. Many of them just came out of nowhere. They just started their organizations 3 or 4 years ago, have no history in doing anything with immigration or with migrants or anything like that. Doesn't matter. They're getting millions from Gavin Newsom to do this work. So yeah, there's a lot of money to be made. The question I have is what happens when the gravy train does run out, or what happens when they've taken in all of this money? Because I don't think it's really going to go where it's supposed to go. My experience from watching these activists raise millions to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline, to stop this next other thing, to do disaster relief for Puerto Rico, was that they were lining their own pockets, keeping the majority of the money and not using it for what they said they were going to use it for. So where does that leave all of these illegal people that are going to be running rampant in our country? It leaves them out in the street for the American taxpayer to have to absorb and take care of. And that's something that I don't think that is being anticipated on the massive level that is going to happen, because it's going to take a long time to clean up. What is it? Over 1 million people that have now come into this country undocumented. You think that ICE is going to have the capacity? You think that our courts are going to have the capacity to deal with all of these people? It's not going to happen for years and years. I would guess at least a decade for that to start, having a dent made into it. So outcomes. We're going to have a massive surge in the need for immigration judges, in the need for border security, in the need for more ICE agents. And also, we're going to have a massive expansion of detention facilities, because we have millions of people coming that are going to continue to pour into our country. And it doesn't seem like anybody here or in Mexico is willing to stop the gravy train. They're going to milk it until it is dry. And
well, I wanted to say something on that. So basically, think about it this way. I was listening to someone commentating last night while I was driving around late on the radio, where they said, if someone was to steal money, right? Say they robbed a bank and they took all that money and they put it into a trust fund for their kid, right? And then 20 years later, the kid has access to this trust fund that the parents created with stolen money. Do we legally have the right to take that money back from the kids since it was stolen?
Well, yes, of course.
Okay, because
stolen money is still stolen money.
It was illegal, right? The kid didn't know it was illegal, but the bottom line is that money's stolen. So how he put it together is, what do we do with all these children that are being brought over from the border, either their parents or not parents? I say the ones that come over and, they were born here or they were taken as little children. What do you do in that case? The children didn't break the law, but the parents did. And see, that's a question that President Trump has put forward. What do we do with these children that were born here through illegal parents, right? Illegal migrants, or that were brought over here illegally, that may indeed have come over with their parents or not? We can't just send them back because this is the only country they know, right?
There has to be a case-by-case basis, Tori. You have to examine it on a case-by-case basis.
Case-by-case basis, exactly.
It does.
And this is why Barr asked for more money yesterday, saying that we need to have more immigration judges. Do you know that we have the highest number now under Trump, immigration judges, ever in the history of the United States? And they have a backlog of over 830,000 immigration cases. 830,000. That's unheard of. 635 judges that we have now. How did they get through 830,000 cases where people don't even turn up? because they're scared that they're going to get deported, and they know that they will get deported.
Well,
the majority of them are in our prisons too. I mean, we should start there.
Well, let me just disabuse you of a notion that a lot of people have about what's happening. The majority of the people that are either trying to stop a deportation proceeding or applying for asylum, and I would guess that vast majority of that backlog of 800,000 people are not asylum seekers. They're not petitioning for asylum because a very, very small percentage of people qualify for asylum. Most ethical lawyers would tell you they won't even take a case unless it has a chance. I mean, it's a good case because they're not going to waste their time. Attorneys for immigration don't get paid on a contingency basis. They get paid up front, and immigration law is the most complicated law, I would say, bar none, except for maybe tax law. So they're not going to waste the court's time, and they're not going to waste their own time. They're not going to waste the resources of an immigrant to take an asylum case all the way to a trial that they're going to lose. That's just ridiculous. So why do we have people by the thousands doing it now? Why do we have all of these pro bono attorneys?
I know. They don't, Cindy. I know. My husband is a resident alien, right?
Right.
And he just renewed his 10-year resident alien visa because he's like, no, I still want to stay British. And I'm like, why? There's no more Britain. They're not even going to Brexit. They're just going to ignore what the people voted for. But it is a very expensive process.
Oh,
even
yeah.
for him who has, 2 children that are American, a wife that is an American, it still cost us, nearly $1,000 just to renew after 10 years. And imagine if you need an attorney, they cost a fortune.
A fortune.
So then think about where are these people getting paid? I mean, you don't go to law school and incur, $200,000 sometimes even, from $100,000 to $200,000 worth of debt and not get paid. So someone's paying these, newly sprouted immigration attorneys.
Sprouted.
Yes, newly sprouted. There's like so many of them. Everyone's like in immigration law. Wasn't Avenatti, who was just indicted again for other things, dabbling in immigration law too?
A whole bunch of these lawyers.
All of them. And the question is, who's paying them? And why are you paying them? And why are you so adamant? Why can't we use point systems like other countries? We want migrants, but we want it at a steady flow. And history can tell you what happens when you have a huge migrant movement. And this isn't migration. The numbers tell of invasion. Look at Europe. They're on fire. They're literally on fire. And if not, let's look at some more an established happening. Think of China. Mm-hmm. Back when Mao was ruling, because the Chinese are people that are very conservative, right? They don't let you become a citizen anymore. You can't. You're either born Chinese or you can come and work, but you can't be Chinese. But what Mao did was, because he was an imperialist type, right? He was like, we're just going to take over everyone because we've got, 14% of the world's population in our country. We're going to take over. And what did he do? He opened up his borders. And when he did that, what happened? The Great Famine. And this has been a repeating thing for the Chinese. The Chinese are smart. They were like, every single time we've aggressively tried to grow as a country, we've had collapse through dynasties, etc. So this is exactly the MO, how I see it, and it is all about money and power, because there's only a few in power, that if they create this collapse to Mexico and the United States, opening up the border completely and creating no division, no border between the two countries, and let's be honest, American work ethics and culture, completely different from Mexicans. You do not see Americans taking siestas, and I totally love siestas, by the way. But, they take them because it's hot. And they do that in Greece too, by the way. Every summer, my grandparents would spank me if I would make noise between the hour of 12:30 p.m. until 5, because that was sleepy time. And even the shops were closed during that time. They would reopen in the afternoon. So, the culture is different. The work ethic is different. The environment is different. What makes you think that if we created an open society between Mexico, Canada, and the US, that we would work well. I mean, look at Europe. They've been neighbors for thousands of years and they can't work well together. So it's all about economic collapse and allowing to have power into those hands of few, and those hands of those few that are propelling this invasion are the ones that want this collapse because they are in power right now. And it is all about money. And, it's so disheartening to see how many people ignore the facts and they're going with feelings. And I feel for every single person that's running away from Honduras or Guatemala because I've been to the ugly side of Brazil myself. It's really bad. It's the some of these neighborhoods are really bad. You're 11, and if you don't want your family slaughtered, you have to perform a sexual favor for the dude next door, or else he and his gang will come and slaughter everyone. You just do it because what can I do? I don't want my mom and dad dead. There are really, really heartbreaking things, but these happen in America too.
Yes.
And no one is saying, well, we have gangs in America that do this. We don't, they're not running for refuge everywhere. They're not coming in droves, because most of these people that are coming on these caravans don't seem like they're running away from anything. Instead, they seem quite organized.
Yeah. And I always try to explain this to people because I know a lot about migration, and I've worked with, I was trained by immigration agents to help people get their citizenship or visas for work, etc. So I've been doing this since I was 17 years old, and translating in the court systems and for immigration attorneys and in detention facilities. And I've heard story after story after story. I know how it works. People don't leave their country without knowing where they're going, how they're going to get there, how they're going to cross into the United States, and how that they have a job waiting for them. They're coming to a certain destination where they know there will be work for them, either because a family member procured the work for them or because it's a place that they come and work at every year or every season. That's how it has always worked. People don't just get together on a WhatsApp chat by the tens of thousands and decide to depart saying fuera ho, fuera ho, fuera ho. It just doesn't happen. And by the way, the beginning caravans, they're not doing this as much anymore, but they all were chanting out with ho, Juan Orlando Hernandez, the dictator of Honduras. It was like they had a political agenda, like they were marching activists, not asylum seekers, not immigrants. They sounded like protesters. That's how they greeted each other, like they were in a cult or something. Fuera ho. Instead of saying hello to each other, they would say fuera ho. And I was like, where does this propaganda come from? Why are they violating the sovereignty of Mexico, bringing these people in as protesters into the country against Honduras president? And I'm not going to, give kudos to the dictator of Honduras. I'm sure he's every bit as horrible as many of the people in that country say that he is. But is this our first Latin American dictator? Because I'm pretty sure that there's been a whole bunch of them. And it didn't empty out the countries that they were from. We didn't give them all asylum. This wasn't a thing. It's not a thing. This is not normal. I will repeat.
Of course, it's not normal. And what you were saying about asylum and seeking asylum, you remember the Venezuelan doctor that during a conference where they were talking about Venezuela with Vice President Pence. Do you remember that meeting? Did you remember seeing it?
No.
Okay, so there were people that actually left Venezuela for political asylum. And there was this one guy who was a professor, a doctorate. I think he was actually practicing medicine, and he had a really hot wife too. And what they did was they up and left their house, their jobs, everything, and paid someone to drive them to Colombia. And when you seek asylum in a neighboring country.
Usually.
Yes. And so what they did was they illegally entered Colombia, and then they applied for asylum to that country and multiple other countries in case Colombia would extradite them, right, to Venezuela. So these are really important things that people need to pay attention to. It's kind of like how I was referring back to Ilhan Omar, how she got asylum and became a refugee here in the United States. She received refugee status and asylum in Kenya, and she was living there fine for 4 years. And then she applied to come to the United States as a refugee, but no one was chasing her. So, this is just, I'm just putting out a very staunch example out there, right? So look at all these people that are coming from Honduras, that are coming from, El Salvador, from Guatemala. They're all coming up. Are they like that doctor? Did they run for their lives
No.
and have a real reason to escape?
No.
It's saying that I come from a neighborhood where it's a shack, or I come from a neighborhood with gang violence. I mean, we have a lot of that in Chicago and New York. Do people go apply asylum to other states? No. They need to get out of it. Just like in every other country, there's bad neighborhoods and bad circumstances. And if indeed you require asylum because you're politically chased down, you need to demonstrate that. I don't see how a 10-year-old leaves Honduras and applies for asylum. Under what umbrella? Or this 15-year-old that left her house. Under what umbrella are you going there? You have a mom and dad, or like that woman. You remember that child, that picture at Time magazine where they had the child crying, and they put President Trump, and the child was crying, and they were like, "Oh my God, it's because she was separated. It's because she put the daughter down," and they just made it a big lie. That woman actually left her husband and children, took his money to come to America with her daughter, and asked for asylum. Asylum for what, though? She's been shipped back, right? They want to know why she took that one child. But this guy was sitting there, and his wife left him, and she left him to say, "Oh, I'm going to America because I don't like you." Do you remember that case?
Yeah, I do. I didn't know the details.
Right. But that's insane. You don't like your husband. You have 3 healthy kids that are in high school. You're obviously from a well-off family. Why are you coming to the border with your child? With your toddler child, who the government separated from you at some point because they were curious as to if it has undergone sexual abuse, because that happens along the border when you walk around with these coyotes. They're not the best people. So, it makes you wonder just, where humanity is at. Where's the moral compass for the people in the United States to say, all right, man, I'm not believing this anymore, because how are kids asking for asylum? It's not like, the president of Honduras is coming after the children and saying, you are my political enemy.
No. And let me just say that a lot of the migrants that that have been questioned on television in Mexico, they are saying very clearly they don't want to stay in Mexico. They have no interest in staying in Mexico. When they were being given humanitarian visas, and remember, a lot of them were in Tijuana, so they're giving humanitarian visas in a city that after AMLO took presidency had a doubling of their wages right along the border. AMLO doubled the people's wages to give them economic incentive. And so the folks that were there from the migrant caravan that got their humanitarian visa had the right to rent, to work, to travel freely throughout the country. And many of them, months after they had been there, still didn't have a job, were still at a shelter, and reporters were asking them, do you have a job? Do you plan to get a job? Do you want one? They were holding job fairs for these folks. Companies were coming to the shelters and taking people. I mean, the Mexican people, they respect migration. They respect workers, and they wanted to offer these folks an opportunity like the one that they claim to be seeking, right? And they said, no, we don't want to work for what we would get here. We want to earn American dollars. We're not going to stay here. What would be the point of us getting a job here if we're going to go and cross the border illegally next week anyhow? What's the point? We're going to
get free housing, money, food stamps, free education too in some states, right? Why would they want to work? It's kind of like that candidate for president for the Democrats gang. He's like, oh, I'll just give you guys $1,000. Anyone over the age of 18, you get $1,000 for doing absolutely nothing. I mean, that's the thing. There's no incentive, no drive, and they don't really want a better life somewhere. They want to go to the United States where they feel they'll get free things because their friends told them they did it.
And in order to claim asylum based on the fact that they are in danger of losing their lives, they're making things up about Mexico, the authorities, the police, the INAMI. There is corruption in Mexico. Not going to lie, okay? It's a problem.
It's everywhere. We have really big corruption here too. So
right. But the way that these asylum seekers are trying to portray the Mexican authorities, the Mexican people, is absolutely false, and it's disgusting. It's stomach turning to me as a Mexican American to see the Mexican people bending over backwards. The Mexican authorities, 4 federal authorities have been murdered. Right? They're not. It was incredible scene at the border where they were literally beating up border officials. They killed 2 of them on one occasion, and the federal police just opened the gate and let them go through because one of the migrants, because of the rush of people, had passed out. He did lose his life because he was kind of squished in the rush to try to get into Mexico. But the Mexican authorities had so much concern for anyone else being hurt, even though they were the ones hurting themselves, that they absolutely opened the gates wide and let them in. This is what's happening. Meanwhile, they are saying that the Mexican authorities are abusing them, that the Mexican people are racist, that they don't want them in the country because they're xenophobic, and it's just not true. And in order to do this, they're even making up fake crimes. They're making up fake crimes, saying Irineo Mujica, the leader of Pueblos Sin Fronteras, just put out on Twitter, you should go look at his Twitter, that somebody burned his vehicle, and it looks like there's a char mark on the back part of his van, and somebody tried to kill him inside of his house or apartment, and they showed a picture of a burned couch in front of his door. The fire didn't reach inside. They burned this stuff outside, but he is now claiming that people are trying to kill him. All of these folks that are within this movement are saying that they are in a constant threat in Mexico, and it's simply not true. It's a ploy so that they can claim asylum in the United States. That's what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I felt really bad for the southern border agents of Mexico when they were pushing down on the gates and pushing through and trampling. I mean, we see it all the time. If we're in a ballpark, a mall or something like that, and something goes off, how many people die from being trampled? And, and if they get trampled, they'll say, oh, you did it. And these people, rather than the media misconstrue what happens, because that's what happens. They take a close-up shot and show them pulling people up or pushing them and saying, you killed them, or kind of like the child that came across our border and died from dehydration and malnutrition. And we did whatever we could to save the child and they died. It was the US's fault. This is how they misconstrue things. And, a lot of people, I got a lot of emails from my listeners that are also listening to us on Facebook. The question is, are there enough jobs in Mexico? Of course there are. They don't have that high of an unemployment rate, and they're a top tourist location. People can set up shop. There's a lot of small areas where they can expand and assimilate and create communities just like we did in the United States in the past. I mean, my family came from Greece, and we have Greek neighborhoods in New York, California, and Florida and Chicago, and they all kind of assimilate together within the new country. I mean, that can happen, but they don't want that to happen because they want to go to the United States because that's what they were tasked to do. So the thing that I'm more concerned about is the participation of elected officials,
Mm-hmm.
of the attorney general in California,
Yeah.
of mayors of border towns, of law enforcement, of customs and border patrol agents, of senators and House members who are pushing this. This is where Americans need to be on the same page and say it is a humanitarian crisis, because we're giving them the hope that there is a possibility of them coming to the United States, and it's better from wherever they are, apparently. And if we don't stop that, it's just going to keep coming back. And there was something that you mentioned about a new caravan formed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell
Yeah.
me about that.
They're saying that there are over 700 children under the age of 10 within this new caravan. This has just been reported today. In fact, I'll share the story on my Facebook page as soon as we get done with the show. It was just sent to me this morning, and it's pretty disturbing that there are so many small children. You know what I'm saying? Doesn't this sound to you like somebody is selling children?
Well, they do that all the time. Children, I mean, come on, Cindy, let's just break it down. Selling children is normal. I mean, you saw just in our tiny state, our recent state auditors report, where one person was paid $750,000 for an adoption. I mean, that's on the state auditor's report. So things like this happen. It's just that no one's paying attention because people are too busy looking down at their phones and just accepting what mainstream media says. And anyone who like you, says anything different, you're just crazy, Cindy. That's the way it is. And, the mainstream media would be reporting this if it was true. And slowly but surely, people are waking up to it, figuring out these fake news, because videos are drip, drip, drip online showing the illegal crossings, showing, prayer rugs being found, because I think a lot of people think it's only Central Americans. They're just a distraction. We have people that are traveling with fake passports from Venezuela. Venezuela has been issuing fake passports to countries of West and Eastern Africa, and they're coming in here.
And how strange is this, okay? This is just reported in the media recently, and I was like freaking out. I'm like, where did this come from? I'm going to share an article with you that just came out. I was like, what? This is an article that came out about a person that's being extorted and threatened by coyotes. It was in AZ Central. And I'd like to get your commentary on this because recently, you're right, Mexico's been overrun with all sorts of immigrants. One that I found a group of them that I found particularly interesting was about 6 weeks ago, some Russians arrived, right? And it is precisely a Russian man that is in this article. I just shared the link in the comments of the show, named Alexander Chazov, who is the central figure of this story, complaining that he is being threatened. Now, the reason I bring up this article and mention how strange it is to me is that the Mexican government and the people of Mexico have known this entire time that people that are in these caravans are being extorted for money, that they're being threatened by organized crime. Is like, that's nothing new. But the fact that the face of this article is a Russian family that is facing extortion from the cartels in Mexico is very interesting. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, we've seen it all the time. There were exposés by mainstream media when they used to kind of report some of the news, how they all come in through other countries getting fake passports, like from Panama or Venezuela or Brazil back in the day, or Argentina back in the day. I'm looking at it, and he is a software engineer who fled for political repression in Russia and had landed in Mexico several weeks earlier. So they're flying in visa, visa stayovers, we have a lot of those in the United States too, right? From every single country. They come here on a holiday visa and just never leave and claim asylum. So he went to Mexico in order to find his way somewhere.
I can guarantee you that
stay in Mexico. And now he found out that when he got there, he believed it was money, but without speaking Spanish, he understood that something was really wrong with the conversation. And that he later found out that they were affiliated with cartels and the local mafia, kind of like what do we have it in North Dakota? The good old boy club, right? So they're actively preying on newly arrived immigrants.
Yeah.
Supporting them. And, he said that he told them that he was from the US. They tried to follow him, and they called the police. I see this. It's pretty interesting that people don't seem to understand how cartels work, how organized crime organization works. Let's pretend you, me, and 4 other people decided that we want to, grab John and extort him, right? And John is like this average dude. I don't know. He's an optometrist, right? He looks at eyes all day and checks glasses. And we're like, hey, listen, we're the cartel. We're the mob. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go clean up this mess where we're going to kill people, or you're going to go hustle these people across the border because we tell you to, or else we slaughter your whole family.
Right.
How do you respond to that? You can't go to the police with it because the police are definitely in the pocket. We all know this.
Yes.
From when? From the early days of bootlegging, right? In the 20s, the mafia had who? The media and the police in their pocket. And this is why I keep circling back to the fact that President Trump is cracking down on law enforcement that are cooperating with organized crime rings. So, wow, it's pretty incredible that people don't read these articles that come out.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible.
And I'm going to close out our hour here pretty soon, but I just wanted to share with you that while we were doing the show together, I was called by the pastor of this shelter 4 times. Obviously, I couldn't take the call, so I really want to get to him because this man yesterday took a group of these unaccompanied minors to go and give their declarations about what Oscar said, which is that this coyote was offering them passage into the United States in exchange for sex. This guy is a pedo, okay? And what did they do when the pastor called 911, when the people of the shelter that were reporting him called 911 to report that he had taken 10 people, including these 3 minors? They charged him with disorderly conduct. The cop, ignored the 911 call, didn't put the right documentation of what he was being sought for, and they let him out within 36 hours.
That's incredible. That is so telling. So the people that are reporting, asking questions, and reporting these crimes are then in turn being punished, kind of like we saw how James O'Keefe exposed voter fraud in New Hampshire, and the Attorney General is charging him with a crime, which is asking questions.
So he was trying to make this whole situation more public. He contacted me, he contacted other media. He's been on, I don't even know how many different television stations in Mexico, but he exposed the fact, and he continues to expose the fact, that reporting these children, their situations in these underground apartments, and these that these activists are paying for, the exploitation that is, the situation is rife for exploitation of these unaccompanied minors, the kidnappings, etc., and that the police and that the authorities are not doing anything to investigate these criminals. And when he took all of these children to this human rights place to make this declaration, which, by the way, didn't go anywhere, because he then reported to me that they told him, after these kids went in, that they were, their hands were tied. They really couldn't do anything. And while that was happening, it wasn't enough for them to be able to do an investigation on this guy or to put out a warrant for him. While that was happening, Oscar was waiting outside to do an interview with the pastor and the kids when they came out, so that he could expose what these kids went there to declare. And somebody from inside came and told Oscar, could he please not report on this? Could he please keep this under wraps? They were working out something, and they didn't want him to report. Can you believe that? The Mexican government is aware of what they're doing, and they don't want anyone to know about it.
Well, and that questions, are they in on it so that way they can hang them, that the criminals themselves and the traffickers hang themselves? But I have to say that this pastor, we should all pray for him. And, I would tell him, why not go to the border and talk to ICE directly and tell them what you know and work with them? Because the United States is taking this very seriously.
Well, hopefully he's listening to you, Tori, and maybe
because my contacts within ICE and by the border in Yuma, Tijuana, and down by El Paso, they are looking for people that would help them figure out what is going on. And if people together come together and say enough is enough, we need to fix this, and cooperate with the good guys, because in Mexico, unfortunately, you don't know who the good guys are because they're so blended into each other. And because of such a stronghold by the border with cartels, it's really dangerous for them. So, that would be the best. We should just pray for him.
Mm-hmm.
He's in a very difficult predicament. He has children that are innocent children. This should never be happening anywhere, especially to a child. Not saying that an adult deserves it any better.
No.
But they're children. And if we are helping and facilitating by having an open border for these coyotes to think they have a chance of making this money, they will go to the most extensive lengths to get it done. So when you speak to him, tell him I am praying for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I applaud him for at least giving joy, whatever it is that he does for these children, for that time that he's with them. And hopefully he can educate them as well as he can. But he should, ask for an appointment with someone on the U.S. side of Border Patrol.
Definitely. Thank you so much for your comments. Thank you for being with me here on A Mexican Crossing Lines. I had a great time being on Tori Says on Red State Radio. We have all your info for your show on the screen. You can go to redstatetalkradio.com and listen to Tori's show noon to 2 Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, it is. And please state yours, because I'm going to upload this for everyone so they can follow you and, tune in to your live shows on Facebook, which I always watch, as you see.
Yeah.
I kind of put you in the background when I'm, doing the dishes or cooking for my family when you pop up. And you're just a wealth of information. And it's so great to see so many people globally use their, be citizen investigative journalists and target wrongdoings throughout our planet and reporting them. Thank you so much for everything you do. I can't wait to have you back onto the Tori Says Show. My fans love you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I feel like we don't talk enough. I really do. We have to do this more often. You can find me on the Mexican Crossing Lines on 88.1 FM, Fargo Moorhead, on Facebook at media_PPP, on Twitter. You can find our channel on YouTube at Duke1517. Say hi, Duke. You haven't even spoken all this time.
I'm still here. I'm in the background, keeping things going.
That's right. And check our channels out, Mexican Online, here on Facebook, The People's Press Project, and kpppfm.com. That's it for today here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with Tori Says, and we also had Oscar El Blue Ramirez on tonight. Thank you, and have a great day.